Just finished up with the project that most mechanics say they've never done or are going to charge someone $2,000 or something to swap them out. Did it in about 4 hours. Swapped out the body mounts, enjoying myself a brewski afterwards. Let's rewind and I'll show you what went down. This is a 2002 Ford Explorer Sport. Going to knock out the position 2 and position 3 body mounts. This will go for if any of your body mounts are going out on this vehicle. Step 1, prep. Get the seats out front and back. 15mm bolts for the most part. This is what you're looking at in the back seat as far as what you got to get out. And we'll move on to step 2 here in a second. Alright, step 2, underneath the front driver's seat, a couple wire harnesses, unplug those, remove the seat. Alright, now that the seats are out, we're going to go ahead and prep some of the panels. This is just going to pop right out, little side trim panel, and then we're going to get this plastic panel out up underneath the front driver's seat next to the emergency brake. This trim panel here that I just showed you has a little bit of a trick to it. There's this plastic clip that needs to be taken off. It's plugged in here on the side. I used this little pry tool to get it out, and then you're going to need to lift the hood release in order to get it through that little opening right there. We're here on the rear driver's side seat. We're going to do the same thing as far as getting these panels off at the floorboard, and then what we're going to need to do is get up underneath this carpet. There's another plastic panel that runs along the seam of the middle of the vehicle, and you don't need to take that panel out. What you can actually do is just kind of slide the carpeting out from underneath it, and that will allow you to get the space you need to lift up the carpet that runs on the interior driver's side of the vehicle. Alright, we're in the trunk of the car now, and this back trim needs to come off as well. I'm going to lift up these little black brackets, fasteners, and we're going to, again, pop off the plastic to expose position number 5 body mount. Then number 4 is going to be right where I was just showing you here, back driver's side rear door underneath the carpeting. Number 3 is going to be right where that middle side panel was that I just showed you. Number 2, where we took off that front panel by the hood release right here. And what we're going to do is get these black grommets off. Sometimes they can be a little bit tricky, but you can get them off usually with some kind of pry tool or a flathead screwdriver. Just got to kind of pull and pry. Alright, body mount position 1 is going to be here under the hood, right next to the battery. Again, we're driver's side. If you look down here, if you see way down there, that rusted bolt down there sitting on top of a washer, that's going to be your body mount position number 1. Trying to get a good angle at it, but what you're going to need is a long extension. I'll show you guys that once we get there, but again, this one's going to be probably the trickiest to get to because there's not a lot of space there, and you're going to have to use a long extension to get that bolt loose enough to where you can raise the chassis up enough to make the space to remove the old body mounts. Show you a little quick trick on how to get these grommets out. Basically stick a flathead down up in one of the edges of it, pop it in, and just pry it out. We got our Mega Milwaukee M18. Highly suggest you get something with real powerful torque on it, and we're gonna knock some of these bolts out. All right, so we got that impact tool on some of these bolts, loosened them up. They're not just gonna come right out. You're gonna have to use a little bit of a trick to get them fully out of the vehicle in order to move on. All right, gonna show you my methodology and the way that I'm gonna approach this. Got some various sized pieces of pipe, some bits of wood, and a 3-ton SUV jack stand that's got this extension. I got this at Napa, and it allows you to get a little bit of raise before you jack it up. Just showing you some of the equipment first, and next step, chock your tires, emergency brake set, and follow all safety procedures. I'm not the guru on that, but you should definitely know at least some practices before doing a job like this. So we're in the back body mount position number 5. This is what we're looking at as far as the first one we're going to remove. Now, once you get the impact or your breaker bar and start loosening this bolt, what's going to happen is once the tension is off, the whole thing's going to start spinning and the bolt's not going to move. So what you need to do is get it braced and hold it. Some people like to use vice grips, hold it, kind of wedge it, and then that way when you spin, vice grips hold. But on this one, what I'm doing is I'm gonna hold it from down below with a piece of wood and jack it up so that it doesn't spin, and then break the bolt. Alright, so here's my setup in removing the first number 5 body mount. I've got the jack with a piece of pipe. I've got a block of wood with a hole drilled in it, and that bolt is sitting through the hole and into the pipe. That way there's nothing obstructing the removal of the actual bolt once I get enough tension on it in order to remove it with the jack. I'm not going to jack it up too much. I'm just going to jack it up probably about an inch, inch and a half in order to get enough tension to hold that body mount and then get the bolt out. Alright, so with that tension, hitting it with the impact extension, that same 18 millimeter bit, and that bolt is loose and you can pull it right out. Alright, so it's going to be the same process. This is body mount number 4. As you can see, there's the emergency brake line in the way of this one, so we can't actually get the same setup with that block of wood laying flat. So what instead we're going to do is put the block of wood on the side, jack it up to where it's just touching in front of the bolt up there with enough tension in order to get the bolt out. Alright, and that's body mount position 4 out. So we're at body mount position 3. Show you the whole reason we're doing this. All this caked, rotted out, old body bushing garbage material that they use for the position 2 and 3 of this year. Not sure why 3 out of the 5 are in great condition, and then the number 2 and 3 is just literally like liquid powder, resiny goop. But this one, the position 3, is going to be the worst. If you weren't having fun yet, this is the real challenge. So you can see we've got, again, the emergency brake cable, and then what looks to be like a transmission line there, so you gotta be pretty careful. What we're gonna do on this one is the same methodology, but you're gonna need a very specific little piece and size wood if you're gonna go about this process that I'm doing to get that to sit on the body bushing. And you want to be real careful when you jack it up that you're not hitting that line with the wood or touching the emergency brake cable when you jack it up, because you don't want to put any tension on that stuff. But if you can position it right there where it's just touching the body mount on the top with the wood block and avoiding anything else, then you'll be good. Alright, mount 3 was a real pain. I had to use a little bit of a different setup. We got a block of concrete with a bottle jack pressed up against a little piece of wood that had to fit in between what looks like a transmission line and the emergency brake cable. So cut yourself a little piece of wood corresponding to that opening, and then there was a ground cable right behind where that piece of wood is, which I had to disconnect. Actually, it was right here. No, it was right behind that piece of wood, in order to create kind of a flush and a bit of an angle to push up against that body mount in order to get that bolt out. This one was a real pain. And if you weren't having fun already, then wait till you get to this one. As you can see, there's the position 3 mount right there. There's 4. We've got 5 out already, and now the third of the 5. We've just got 1 more to go. We don't need to fully remove position 1 in order to create the space to replace 2 and 3. Alright, we're at body mount position 2. It's a little block of wood I've been using to hold the mounts in place. This one's going to be a lot easier than 3 and 4 were. We've got this one just right there. So we'll put that little piece of wood up against it, jack it up, and then that's going to hold it in place in order to remove the bolt. Alright, so after looking at it again, I was able to get number 2 out reasonably easily. After jacking it up from below, like I showed you before, took the extension off and just had enough clearance. So basically a deep socket 18, or if you need a conversion of 1/2 inch to 3/8, this little conversion bit was able to get me enough extension in order to get in there and get a hold of that bolt and get it out with the power tool. So now I'm going to show you what I'm going to use to get number 1 loose. Real long extension bar. You see that there? We're going to drop it down into the well here, and we're going to loosen up the bolt to basically the last thread to where we don't disconnect it, and we've just got enough space to lift out from up below the chassis and separate it from the body itself. You're going to need an 18mm deep well socket to get this bolt loose. There's nothing else that's going to work. Short socket 18 isn't going to work. So a couple specialty tools. Hopefully you'll use them again in the future, but you know, I don't see myself pulling these things out too often. Maybe the deep socket, but this extension bar is pretty exclusive to this job. Not too many things require this kind of reach. Alright, so there it is. Body mount position 1. Bolts loosened up to probably second or last thread. And we're there. All the prep is done. We've got all 5 bolts either loosened like that number 1 or completely out. That's going to allow us to jack up the vehicle from about, I'd say, in between position 2 and 3, so we have enough clearance to get those 2 mounts in. But if you are doing all 5, I know that's the case on the 2nd generation Explorers, that those all rot out. You are going to kind of have to move down segment by segment and jack up the vehicle according to which mount you're going to be replacing. All right, so we got successfully number 1 out, or number 2 rather. This was sitting up above here in this opening, and basically you just have to jack up the body enough to where it separates out and you've got enough room to get this. What you may experience is that connected to this is that other little piece over there, and with all the rust and debris that you can see there, it's a little bit difficult to separate out. But if you whack it with a hammer a couple times, maybe stick the prying section of the hammer in between the 2 metal sections here and just kind of work it, it will eventually just pop off. And it flew over there once I had pried it out. I'll show you a little bit better on the next one as far as how that works. As you can see, there is number 3 mount, and what we've got is with the body lifted up, it's kind of just flopping around in there. So what I'm gonna have to do is find some kind of pry tool and stick it in between the 2 metal sections and pry out this bottom section just like I did the other one, in order to separate the 2 pieces, and then from there we'll be able to get the top part of it out. But you can't get the top portion out obviously without separating out the 2 bits, 2 sections where the 2 pieces of grommet fit together. And as you can see, I mean, if there was a body bushing in there, then this wouldn't be moving around at all once the space had been cleared and the body lifted. And that's the whole reason why you get suspension noise on these old Explorers, is just there's no cushion and you got metal on metal when you're hitting a bump and stuff like that, or squeaking or clatter, whatnot. You may think it's your actual suspension, but it's usually your body mounts. There, we got it. Body mount number 3 out. You can see again right there between all those cables and whatnot, there was actually enough room to lift it up, separate it out, and remove it. I kind of had to work it down a little bit in order to find a recess in order to remove it. But remember when I told you you weren't ever going to have another use for this thing? Well, I ended up whacking that mount with this thing to separate it out, so I guess it did have another use after all. There's your part numbers for the number 2 and the number 3. I forget which part number is which, but I'll figure it out once I open up the boxes and look at it. They're only going to fit in one particular section with, depending on the opening of the grommet. And then basically they don't sell them as kits on this car. You got to buy them all individually. The 4 grommets or body bushings altogether, both sides, I think ended up running me a little over $300, which is pretty costly. These things are not easy to find and they're not cheap. Alright, so we're looking at body mount position number 3. That was the one near the 2 lines. And again, I just wanted to kind of recap my methodology. I was able to, with the car lifted, get the mounts in a little bit further down. I kind of made a little bit of leeway room just by slightly moving these wires off to the side, kind of like that, and that created enough space to feed the mount through and then get it into position. Dropped it in the slot and did the same for body mount number 2. And then once the top portion was in, I had to do the same thing with the bottom portion, feed it through, get it in that area, finagling some of these just by moving them slightly with my hand. And then once that one was through the bottom and connected to the top,
I lowered down the chassis and then just tightened up the bolt. Didn't need to apply any pressure from below. The bolt just went right in and tightened up. So I haven't hit him with the impact yet. I was just kind of get everything in position before I do that. This one, again, the position 3 was the trickiest, but it is doable without having to disconnect these lines. You just have to finagle it a bit and come up with a little method like I did. So I'm gonna pretty much wrap it up from here and hit him with the impact, and then I'll just go over a couple things and we'll close this out.
The jack point I used to separate the body from the frame was pretty much right here on the step that we've got installed in this vehicle. Right below there's a bracket, and what I did was put a piece of wood here up under the bracket, and if you look you can actually see that the bracket is supported here at the frame. So by putting the piece of wood right here and lifting it up, it was actually lifting up, not at the end of where this would have been because it would have bent, but on this good solid piece of metal, pushed up here, which pushed up here, and had enough support in order to not do any damage. Alright guys, so I'm not giving you torque specs, and I'm not telling you anything about which anti-seize you should be using, but you should definitely review some of that stuff before trying this yourself. This is the 4th set of body mounts I've done, and so far so good. Like I said, we're wrapping this up. I've gone ahead and gotten the position 2 impacted. Hit this one a bit with the gun, checking it down below once I've hit it with the impact. The replacement body mounts that I put in did have red anti-seize in them, so if you are going to be doing the rest of them, make sure you clean those old bolts up and hit them with some fresh anti-seize. Torque specs, not exactly sure, but the way I do it is just check it down below, and if the grommet is kind of pushed out a little bit and doesn't seem like it's tightened to the point where it's going to bust, I'm happy with it. I know the bolt's going to hold it down tight and it's going to get the cushion it needs, but guarantee you there's some torque specs out there and you may want to make sure you torque it right as opposed to doing it the way I am. Take a look at these rotted out components here, all rusty, not a speck of any type of bushing or anything that's going to dampen that metal to metal contact. Everything's just completely deteriorated into a pile of crap, and this is infamous on these, all the debris and old parts from the old mounts. So there's the new ones all tightened down and good to go. Not too much tension there on the top, just enough to squish them down, make sure it takes up that vibration. So all right, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Just going to recap everything. Tightened up that last bolt, position 1 extension. Didn't hit it with the impact too much. Left it on a low setting because it was just removing that bolt. A little pretty picture of a nicely maintained '02 Explorer here in almost the new year of 2022. Happy New Year's to everybody. The project went as described. 3-ton jack, 8-ton bottle jack. Don't think you'd need an 8-ton, but we got our part boxes here, bits of wood. We have not a impact, but just a regular electrical wrench. You got your set, you got the hammer, you got the multi-tool. We have our long bits, we had the flashlight, Just kind of showing you everything that I used at some point today. Magnet tool, plastic pry tool, bits of pipe. I'm sure there's a lot more buried in here, but we've got those body mounts in, and figured I'd just wrap it up with you guys as far as all the stuff I used. And now that we've finished everything, I think we're pretty much good to go. For the cleanup job, I'll just basically clear all that stuff out that I just showed you, put the carpeting and those grommets back in, and then we will put the trim panels back on, the one up in the front, and I've already done the trim panels in the back and put the grommet in there, so we're all good. So 5 is good, 1 is good. It's just a matter of cleaning everything out, and that's it. We're done. Replacing the carpet and the trim and putting the seats back in. And hope you guys are doing well. Take care.